some of the weird and unique decks to the tournament. And, you know, interestingly enough, this may sound like a, quote, weird deck because of the representation, but Token Druid is not being brought by many people despite its popularity.
Yeah, we actually had an opportunity to talk to the players before this, and a lot of them mentioned that, you know, my lineup is really good against Token Druid. I thought there'd be a lot of Token Druid. You know, I have all these control decks beat Token Druid.
Let's kick it off between Jing versus XiaoT with a good old-fashioned Tempo Rogue Mirror, a matchup that we've been seeing a lot throughout the years, but it's not exactly the way you expect it to be based on what you see on ladder.
Yeah, well, this is also not a mirror match per se. They are two rogues. They're two, you know, raiding party rogue decks, but Jing is playing the Hench Clan Burglar Vendetta Underbelly Fence version, while XiaoT, he is playing the ultra-aggressive version that even plays double deadly poison, just squeak in a bit more damage.
Right.
Actually, I think it was Just Saying who referred to it as turn 8 rogue, because your goal is to, you know, get your opponent down pretty low, and on turn 8, attack your opponent with a waggle pick. You know, Leroy your opponent, attack them with the Leroy, waggle pick them, attack them with Leroy again, and they're dead.
Right. For like a solid 20 damage or more, depending on what you have in your hand. It's right. And then Jing, he has that Thief package. I mean, it's something that speaks very near and dear to Brian Kibler's heart. Being able to pull cards from other classes, which won't work for something like Blink Fox, but the Hench Clan Burglar, maybe that comes into effect here. And then, you know, XiaoT having more of that Pirate package for pressure. However, some of the most important cards aren't Pirates, aren't Thieves, which are a little bit synonymous to each other, is the Evil Miscreant. This card is a new card from the Rise of Shadows expansion, which has a combo, add 2 random lackeys to your hand, and that has been so insane for Rogue.
Yeah, when Evil Miscreant was revealed, a lot of people were like, well, this card looks like it might be pretty good. You know, it's hard to evaluate. Even seeing the lackeys, not having a chance to play them, it's difficult to really look at a card like that and know how good it will be. Turns out it's really good. I've seen games and been involved in games where, you know, a rogue is able to just dig themselves out of an incredible hole or push a tremendous advantage thanks to the Miscreant.
Right.
The Ethereal Lackey in particular, giving you the Discover a spell, you get yourself in a bind. Ooh, I discovered a Vanish. I guess I'll use this preparation that I didn't have a use for in my hand. I'll prep Vanish, reload the board with more lackeys, and get a ton more cards.
That's right. I've seen so much utility, and if you even look at some of the data out there for HS Replay, almost all the lackeys are good, right? When you see a lot of these random pool effects, maybe 1 or 2 really don't cut the rest compared to the others. One common example is Unidentified Maul for Paladin. A lot of people universally agree 3 out of the 4 transformations are good, and then there's one that's a little bit awkward or even bad. In this case, I feel like almost all of them are very good, and that's what gives the Evil Miscreant so much power, because of its combo versatility and because of just its straight up raw power.
Yeah. The fact that it has 5 health just makes it so hard to remove. Imagine if Cold Blood were still 1 mana. How brutal!
I shiver at the thought.
How brutal Evil Miscreant would be then.
Yeah.
But even now, you know, one of the lower win rate lackeys is actually the Evolve one. Wicked Lackey, I believe it is, that you know, evolves a minion.
Yes.
And that is particularly powerful just with the Evil Miscreant itself, because, well, it's so hard to kill. So, you know, even if you your opponent, you're able to, you know, kill your opponent's other stuff on board, it's like, well, the 1/5 really hard to kill early on. Oh, I'll make it into a 4-drop, and there's just a ton of really powerful 4-drops you can hit.
So now that we took a little bit of time to set up how the Tempo Rogue really functions, we can jump into this game here. And Jing and XiaoT roping a little bit back and forth. They have options to either play on curve or utilize the coin, which is a very crucial part of this matchup.
They're just giving us an opportunity to set the stage.
Right, that's right. They do. We talked to them ahead of time. Hey, XiaoT, give us a little time. Can you rope turn 2 unnecessarily?
It is worth noting that, you know, these players, we were talking a bit about this backstage. You know, it is it's a situation where you may have what seems like an obvious play, but you don't necessarily want to make that obvious play to give your opponent the information that you don't have other plays. And here, Jing, I actually think, had a very real set of options. Coining out the Miscreant is one of them. Just using his Acidic Swamp Ooze to kill his opponent's dagger in anticipation of a possible Hench Clan Thug, considering your opponent didn't swing, is exactly enough.
I think a lot of people will immediately ask, you know, in response to that, Kibler, why not save the Acidic Swamp Ooze for the inevitable waggle pick?
Well, that is what Jing's plan turns out to be. He decides, okay, well, using my my Miscreant now is a solid enough play that it gives me the opportunity to save my Ooze for a higher impact opportunity later on.
Right. And, you know, there's some really weird interactions with Tempo Rogue. I personally believe even though a large percentage of the high-level pros consider Tempo Rogue to be probably the best deck out there right now, I still think it has some weird, awkward parts that could be refined. Like Henchclan Thug and Wagglepig have such a very tumultuous relationship, and I'm like, do they really fit together? Even though they're both very independently powerful.
Well, a lot of versions that we've actually seen of this Rogue deck. In fact, Jing's version does not include Henchclan Thug.
Right.
And I've heard some people say it's like, when you see a Rogue deck that doesn't play Henchclan Thug, you know that something's kind of crazy going on, right?
Sure, yeah.
All right, well, now Jing, he did not choose to use that as Sacred Swamp Ooze, and now he is facing a 4/4 Henchclan Thug. He has Backstab, and he has his Dagger, so he could Backstab Dagger, attack with this, and then use Witchy Lackey to get a 4-drop here.
That's right.
He does take 4 to the face himself, but that's a pretty great opportunity to get rid of this.
Right.
And I think that part of what Jing's thought process was last turn was that so many of the lackeys leave him in a reasonable situation against the Henchclan Thug. He could get the Goblin Lackey that can give a minion +1 attack and rush. He could get the Kobold Lackey that does 2 damage, combined with his Backstab. This would allow him to take out the 4/4 as well. So
yes,
pretty much anything allows him to actually come out ahead against a Lackey here, and that's what we're going to see.
That's right, and the pool of 4-mana minions are pretty concentrated because a lot has left.
All right, 4/4. It's totally fine.
And from here, Jing's able to get the board dominance. Remember, this is called Tempo Rogue for a reason. They're trying to get ahead and stay ahead. So whoever's the one dominating the board, it's not really about life total here early on, although that will become the case when you look at XiaoT's hand. He's got Leroy, Shadow Step, and Viscerate.
Well, and we're seeing the actual tempo advantage here, I think, belongs to Jing's deck, because when you draw your Henchclan Burglar, specifically in the Rogue Mirror, if you're able to Henchclan Burglar plus Vendetta, or you're able to Henchclan Burglar into, like, Underbelly Fences, you're just in such a strong position. He doesn't have the Vendetta yet, but if he draws Vendetta next turn and XiaoT plays a minion here, it's like, oh, well, that's just dead anyway. And now XiaoT's actually in a pretty awkward spot because he has that Deadly Poison, which is great at pushing damage from ahead, but he's facing a 4/4 now. He can't even combo at his own Miscreant without essentially wasting his Deadly Poison here to just get +1 on an already expended Dagger.
Right, and this is like the part where he weighs, does he want to spend his turn removing and once again being behind? Or does he take the damage and accept that he'll have to catch up on the future turns? And this is what he's going for. He's investing in his future turns and hoping that the lackeys can pull him out. He knows Evil Miscreant, low chance for it to do anything right now. I mean, he even evaluates, does he even want to burn something like a Shadow Step to try to give more utility, to have those lackeys give a bigger comeback? And lackeys have a very strong comeback potential, largely because there's dealing damage, there's giving rush, and there's a lot of ways for you to climb back.
And specifically in this matchup, I think that we're going to see Jing play more defensively. His deck is the one that is more centered around the ability to generate advantages. He has those Henchclan Burglars. He has those Blink Foxes, things that will give him more cards. And Jing, or rather XiaoT, has more burst potential. He has the Deadly Poisons. He has, as we see in hand already, Leroy plus Eviscerate plus Shadow Step. So much damage potential.
All right, well, Henchclan Burger discovering cards from another class. These are a little interesting. Savagery sounds really good if you can get, like, Waggle pickup. But, I'm not exactly sure what a lot of utility it is there. I think if you're going for a tempo-based matchup, Snipe actually sounds not too
Snipe is powerful, but you know your opponent has 2 lackeys in hand.
You're right.
So unless you're waiting until, the Savagery is 1 mana, and look, we're even seeing him just take this out. He's respecting the possibility of a Witchy Lackey from his opponent, or just a Shadow Step, something to give XiaoT more ways to utilize that minion.
That's right. Well, so for people who are still learning Rise of Shadows, Goblin Lackey on the left here for XiaoT, that gives your friendly minion +1 attack and rush. Ethereal Lackey gives him the ability to discover a spell. So if we find something that's really powerful for tempo, say like another Eviscerate, XiaoT can climb back a little bit into this board. Let's see what he can get off this Ethereal Lackey.
All right, finds Cheap Shot, Vendetta. He does not have anything so you can see with Vendetta. Cheap Shot's pretty interesting. You could, well, I mean, Cheap Shot's pretty good because you could use Cheap Shot this turn and then follow up with Eviscerate. Unidentified Contract is, I mean, Cheap Shot and Vendetta in this position are actually identical, right?
Right. In this position, yes, although Cheap Shot has a little bit more flexibility and can scale if you want to save that for a future turn.
He can also take Cheap Shot now and then use South Sea Deckhand plus Goblin Lackey and Eviscerate to clear off pretty much the entire board. He also just has the Deadly Poison in his dagger.
That's right.
So, all right, he's going to go for the Vendetta and just use it right away. And it looks like he's using his weapon as well, yeah.
It's actually just the correct play because he's running out of time. Doesn't have time for the animation for the cheap shot to echo back in.
Oh, and there's Vendetta.
Yeah.
So speaking of tempo power, that is very effective alongside that savagery. Just as long as Jing doesn't play it. That was one of the things that I kept doing, you know, in my first days.
Losing your Vendetta
set.
both.
I would be like, okay, I'm going to play this, then oh no, order lull.
Yeah.
So many.
And importantly, he's not going to get cards that activate the Vendetta off of those Blink Foxes. This is a Rogue Mirror match.
Right.
So only the cards off Henchclan Burglar actually enable the Underbelly Fence and Vendetta. So he only has the 2 copies. So he does need to hold on to that savagery until he finds his other Burglar or decides, okay, I don't care about these.
Which is fine for now because, I mean, there's a 1-mana 1-1 on the other side of the board. Not that big of a deal.
Yeah, I mean, and I think from Jing here.
Oh, are you kidding me? Myra's Unstable
Wow.
Element, the legendary spell from the Boomsday Project, which draws the rest of your deck. That is absolutely insane for Jing if he even needs it.
Yeah,
I mean, he's going to have a high count of resources all throughout the game, but that almost seals the deal of his lead.
Yeah, that's huge.
That being said, XiaoT still has a lot of damage, and he's going to be the one that can reasonably use Myra's better because he can dump his hand for damage and then utilize Myra's Unstable Element. If Jing has, you know, a hand of 7 cards all the time, Myra's isn't that good.
Yeah, XiaoT picks up a Captain Greenskin here, but with no weapon to use it on.
Right.
He's been sort of in awkward positions with his weapon this entire time, and part of that is due to that Henchclan Thug. If he hadn't had that Henchclan Thug, which induced him to attack on turn 3,
exactly,
he might have had a Deadly Poison and a dagger that he got to attack with twice. Then he would have still had Captain Greenskin. So I mean, I've even heard some people cutting their Henchclan Thugs from the list as Jing has, in part due to Waggle Pick, in part just due to it inducing you to do things that your deck kind of otherwise doesn't want you to do.
Right. I mean, and it's not like XiaoT made that mistake.
Right.
If the Henchclan Thug was not answered, XiaoT probably would have even been winning the game because he had game-ending damage at this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's one of those opportunities where it was a checkpoint for Jing to clear, but now that he's cleared it, it's made XiaoT's life very awkward to say the least. And it seems like XiaoT is just, once again, going to go for the removal plan.
Yep.
And if you looked at this without the mana crystals, I wouldn't be able to tell who went first because it feels like Jing's the one taking initiative, even though he's going second.
Yeah, it's true. And crucially, XiaoT can afford to use all of these cards to just pick apart Jing's board because he has Myra's Unstable Element in his hand.
Right.
He has that burst of additional resources available to him. Speaking of additional resources, Jing is kind of flooded on them with a raiding party now.
Right. It's almost like he doesn't even need that raiding party, although it just helps him start to really push his lead.
I do think this game kind of is indicative of one of the interesting things about Rogue right now, which is that it's, other than what we're seeing from XiaoT's side, we're not really seeing Jing have opportunities to even use his removal. A lot of these Rogue decks can play in such a way that they kind of kill your stuff and then just burst you from hand, which is frankly how XiaoT's deck is built. That's the reason it has deadly poisons rather than additional minions. It's mostly just looking to get in damage here and there and then ultimately just blow you up.
Right. Yeah, a lot of Rogue players, sometimes they struggle against those late game situations on ladder. You're talking about when, there's big like minion swings with Rush from Dr. Boom. There's the Walking Fountain. Oh my gosh,
how many
other Myra's Unstable Element. Preparation is really good.
Preparation is nice. It actually lets him play Raiding Party this turn if he wants, which is pretty nice.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, he doesn't need to play Raiding Party this turn. He can just dagger kill this, hold on to the Raiding Party, because there's no reason to specifically prep it now.
The reason you'd want to play it now is if you don't want to draw the pirate the next turn, but he's not punished for doing so.
He also has enough pirates. Speaking of Raiding Party, there's one for XiaoT, but he does not have an easy way to activate it. He just has all of the most expensive cards in his deck in his hand. He has Greenskin, Leroy, Myra's, all of his 5-cost cards. It's just a very, very awkward draw for XiaoT.
I wonder.
And in particular, this Rogue matchup is one that you really want to be efficient. You really want to be, getting damage in because your opponent doesn't really have healing, and you want to be able to fight for the board and protect your minions by tempoing and killing your opponent's minions. XiaoT has not had an opportunity to do that. He's been playing from behind this entire time, and his is the deck in this matchup that I think plays from behind worse.
Well, that being said, maybe he doesn't have to. XiaoT has Leroy and Shadow Step, so that's 12 damage. Let's say he daggers in Greenskin. That's 6 damage through the weapon because it's a 2 attack, 3 durability. So that gets you to 18. Maybe you can start making up a little bit of that difference. Maybe even Captain Green said 6. I think XiaoT still has in his mind that ability to burst front hand.
I mean,
it's not out of it.
It absolutely is true. You know, and that's one of the things about this deck that makes it quite powerful is that you don't need to keep those minions on board. You know, Jing so far has basically just attacked into a couple things.
Right.
XiaoT has not attacked Jing. The only damage that Jing has taken is from attacking minions, I believe.
Yeah. That being said, Vendetta here is going to shine very bright. Dealing 4 damage for 0 just sounds overpowered, and frankly, if you're
good.
able to get it off consistently, it is, but because of that limitation for the burglary.
I mean, now we can see Prep Raiding Party, Waggle Pick, Free Dread Corsair.
Or 2.
Or 2, if he draws the other one.
And News at the end, right?
Yeah.
He can shut down the Captain Greenskin weapon.
Yeah, this is just an absolutely explosive turn from Jing here, and we're seeing the real power. A lot of people have discussed, you know, we talked about the Miscreant, you know, the lackeys being a big source of this deck's power, and they definitely are. But Raiding Party is the glue that actually makes everything fit together, and we see this turn is really demonstrative of exactly that. He not only gives you card advantage, but not only tutors up a powerful weapon, but you know, just this massive tempo swing thanks to these Dread Corsairs being pirates that you're pulling out of your deck. Suddenly, XiaoT, we were talking, oh, he might be able to piece together this burst damage he needs. Sorry, you're dead next turn, and there's 2 taunts in the way.
Well, that backstab gives XiaoT the ability to activate the Raiding Party and pick up his own Dread Corsairs to add meat to his front line. But, you know, at that point, are you just playing the I'm going to lose a little bit slower game? But then I don't even know a way for him to pull himself out of the situation. You know, there's always like the play to not lose or play to win. What is the play to win line?
I don't see one right now. You know, this is a position where XiaoT, you know, he can dig, find his own Dread Corsairs like you mentioned, find Waggle Pick, kill one of the opposing Dread Corsairs, but then, you know, he's still just losing his own board to Jing's board, and then doesn't have much of a follow-up. Maybe there's, I mean, Leroy, you can't even kill the Whelps because there's taunts in the way.
Right.
Whatever he does, oh, is he going with Myris? Okay.
I mean, I think Desperate Times calls for desperate measures.
And finds, some air in the form of the second Raiding Party.
I'm out of cards.
And Backstab plus SI does kill one of these.
Right. There's 10 damage on the other side.
This guy's toast.
Jing just picks up a little bit extra damage. Savagery here is actually super
Savage,
good.
1 cost, kill your guy.
So Jing has pretty much his pick of the litter, whatever he wants to do to establish firmer board control. But the first thing that's in his mind is, what combination of cards could I potentially lose to a 9 mana if my opponent, say, has preparations and all the damage in the world?
Yeah, that's really, Jing is in the position now, given that XiaoT has played the unstable element, that he just needs to not die, right?
Right.
And he doesn't, you know, he could.
Oh, Rain of Toads is too expensive, though.
Yeah, he doesn't have preparation to go with it. Circle of Healing doesn't do anything. I mean, Rain of Toads is the card I think you take here, simply because, yeah, it's just so powerful if you do set it up.
Right.
I mean, he could also, if he wanted to just backstab Thanify, but you know, he could also just trade one of these, then Master of Disguise something.
Yeah, I think you want the maximum board pressure because you just want the threat to kill your opponent if they don't do anything to you next turn. The bait is, I think, if Jing wants to swing with the weapon.
Yeah, it looks like he's just going to trade.
Yeah, I don't know if swinging the weapon here is really needed.
Yeah, there's no real reason to give up your possible taunt here, lose your weapon. You just prep Raiding Party.
Sure, prep Miscreant.
All right, he's going to prep out the Miscreant.
But he can get a Ethereal.
It's true, yeah. That's one of the crazy things, is that there's always these little things that might happen. Faceless plus Goblin Lackey does give him the ability to clear something off, but I still don't think that's going to be enough to get him back into this. Find a 2/2 Murloc.
Yeah, it seems almost pitifully, you know.
Well, I was going to say, he can Shadow Step the Miscreant, replay it. Dig
although
for
you
more.
lose the preparation.
Right, you lose your preparation effect.
But I think you got to do it.
If he did hit Ethereal Lackey into Vanish,
Right.
He could have at least gotten rid of the board with the preparation effect.
2 Goblin Lackeys allows him to rush onto the board. And a Faceless Lackey has pretty good options for 2-mana minions. Potentially could change it. We're talking about armor gain, lifesteal.
All right.
Well, kind of funny in a way. Underbelly Fence making an appearance on the other side.
Yeah, XiaoT is digging for something.
I mean, at this point, he's actually running out of time because he can't actually clear off everything. I think
there's no way to make this work.
I think this is dead here for XiaoT. Looking at lethal right on the board. That's going to do it. Game 1 goes to Jing with his Thief Tempo Rogue. Making Killer a little bit happier. Yeah, Death Taxes and Zoo Warlock in a new meta.
And Edwin Van Cleef at the World Championship.
That's right, we got it all here. Hope you guys are enjoying the match so far as we go into game number 2. Jing with pretty much some of the most powerful cards that Zoo Warlock is able to put in their arsenal these days. Evil Genius, a fantastic Lackey mechanic, or card with the Lackey mechanic. As you guys saw, the power of Evil Miscreant. Very much similar with Evil Genius and Scarabag and a bunch of combinations. And Magic Carpet, which we've been seeing on display already today, but I can't sing enough praises on just how good that card is.
Yeah, I think Magic Carpet may have been the single most underrated card coming into the Rise of Shadows expansion in terms of how people evaluate it and just how powerful it turned out to be. Because it is a card that gives the Zoo deck a way that not only can it come back when it is behind, which was something that Zoo Warlock decks typically lacked. If you got to the mid game and you didn't have the board as Zoo, you were crushed most of the time. However, with Magic Carpet, you can play your Magic Carpet on a board that's empty and just play out a bunch of 1-drops and kill your opponent's stuff. And that makes it even better when you're ahead, because your opponent tries to stop your onslaught of minions with taunt minions, for instance, of their own. Your Magic Carpet can just absolutely demolish them.
That's right, and it also allows the Zoo Warlock to play much leaner, just the way you build your deck. Sato was commenting that if you look 60% of the way down deck list, you're still at 1 mana cost cards.
Yeah.
And I think it just goes to show you how flexible that hero power is for Warlock on full display yet again for another year.
Yeah, absolutely. And the turn 1 Flame Imp,
Iconic.
a start that everyone has learned to fear for a very long time. And XiaoT here without a backstab or SI agent. We will note, he had 2 SI agents in his opening hand that he chose to mulligan.
That's right. And he had Edwin Van Cleef. Yeah. So I think in XiaoT's mind, when you're keeping Van Cleef on the coin, which, by the way, is one of the highest mulligan win weight cards that you can have because Edwin Van Cleef on coin just gives it huge power spikes. I think he was like, you know what? I'm going to look for things like Raiding Party and Preparation, just like ways to really pump up this Van Cleef. And more importantly, try to find tools that are guaranteed to help not only win the board, but cement my lead if I'm able to get ahead.
Yep. Both these players definitely taking their time, very deliberate here, recognizing the stakes of this World Championship.
Yeah.
And while it may look like, oh, well, you have these obvious plays. I mean, XiaoT, for instance, went to the rope. He didn't have a play. Right. What was he going to do? Coin out his dagger? No, he's setting up his future turns, as well as kind of balancing the range of possible options the opponent might think he does have.
Yeah, this is something that players do fairly often in the highest level of play, is to try to reduce the amount of clues that they're giving to their opponent. In Hearthstone, there's a lot of play patterns that people tend to fall into. If they have 0 mana left and you're hovering over a card, it's like, well, it's a 0 mana card that you can play, and you're evaluating the risk and reward of using it right now. And the same thing happens with how fast you play a card. If you have nothing to play and you just immediately whip out the first option, your opponent's like, okay, well, I guess that's the only card that he had at that mana cost. Maybe I can think about reading his hand. Yep. So I like that they're taking the time to pause and evaluate their options.
And some players even, they have like a heuristic for this. They decide they want to wait a certain amount of time no matter what.
Right.
Because they don't want to give away any information. I think someone was saying that Amnesiac, he basically just will never make a play before the rope starts burning.
Yes. Unless it's like fairly obvious, like you have 1 card in as Exulgent, and then you have 10 mana. It's like, okay,
well, I'll do that.
I'll just do that.
But in the stages of the game where you have possible options, and that certainly enrages Twitch chat because they're like, oh my God, stop roping, Resident Sleeper. But this is the World Championship. This is the stage where every possible edge and every possible leak truly does matter.
I admire your naivete to believe that if we eliminate reasons for Twitch chat to complain that they will stop.
Oh, I'm not saying they'll ever stop.
And I hope they never do.
We were saying, death, taxes, Edwin Van Cleef at the World Championship, and Twitch chat raging.
Well, specifically with the ropes, but in this case, I actually think it does have some merit. So, for example, with Jing, Magic Carpet on 3, normally very good. But Evil Genius has some merit here because you can squeeze in that 1-mana Lackey play, and you can shut down that Evil Miscreant a little bit more efficiently, but it's not a guaranteed thing because it's a pool of Lackeys. So I think Jing in his mind saying, you know what, 2 Magic Carpets, really want to get this. Plus, Evil Genius with the Lackeys is better.
Disrespect. Wow. That is a lot of damage that he just put into a 1-attack minion.
That's right.
To protect that Magic Carpet, pretty much, just like we were saying. With that Evil Genius in his hand, that's 2 1-cost minions to get rushed with the Magic Carpet, and possibly a double time, double pay Goblin Lackey to give +1 attack to that Magic Carpet to get it in there to attack some things. Just a lot of possible ways that Jing can leverage this.
Yeah, Zoo Warlock tends to struggle against the Tempo Rogue because of their arsenal of small removals, and you add in the Lackeys, Backstab, SI Agent, just dealing all 2 damage to everything. But in this case, XiaoT, once again, limited by his mana usage, and that Coin Evil Miscreant, not exactly giving him the best play this turn, but in the future turns, should be pretty good. Now, that being said...
Cheap Shot's a nice one. It's very powerful if he is able to stabilize even slightly, to be able to remove multiple minions from Jing's board.
Yeah.
Or just kill one now if he decides that he really needs that, because, yeah. Does pick it up.
I do think life is a pretty important resource, not necessarily right now, but as the game progresses, it will be fairly important to balance. And that's where things like Dread Corsair could be really clutch for XiaoT, if you can finally lock it just in time to stop Jing's aggression.
Well, there's a Mecharoo. Possibly Mecharoo, it gets rush, attack into the 1/1 if he wants. Play an Evil Genius, eat the other one that comes off of it.
Yeah. I like some kind of Evil Genius play this turn.
There's also just a possible second Magic Carpet, which just makes, it makes each of the future things that you play even more threatening. Each become 3 attack.
Oh, yeah. We've seen the effects of cards like Timberwolf being able to stack multiple times. It's just, it's like +1 attack. How hard can that really be? Or how much damage can that really be? It turns out a lot. And if you're able to multiply that even more, it ends up becoming quite silly. Snowballing out of control.
I suspect, though, that we may see Jing look for an opportunity to get the Evil Genius down here. He doesn't have much time, though. Yeah, he's going to go ahead and Evil Genius.
Yeah. Okay, Goblin Lackey and Witch's Lackey. I like this plus attack.
Yep.
On the Magic Carpet, just make it more resilient to any kind of trades that can come down.
Yeah, just building out a wide board. XiaoT does have 1 copy of Fan of Knives in his Rogue deck. Fan of Knives was a card that didn't really see a ton of play in the style of Tempo Rogue, but with that rise in popularity, or at least expected popularity of Token Druid, we've started to see Fan of Knives come in at least 1 copy, sometimes 2 copies into these decks. And that's definitely something that's on Jing's mind as he sets his board up.
That's right. It's very next level in the sense. A lot of players, when we were interviewing them, said, I hope that players are smart enough to know that Token Druid was not good for this tournament. And it's like, well, that's a fairly interesting thing to assert, because a couple people did actually bring Token Druid. And it ends up being weird, because XiaoT ends up playing against a Token Druid player.
Yeah. And he kind of hedged a little bit, right? Yeah. There's that single copy of Fan of Knives, which you probably wouldn't play if you didn't expect there to be at least a decent number of token decks. Because Fan of Knives, frankly, is not that good most of the time against this Zoo deck because of the presence of Double Grim Rally.
Yes.
If you do get a prep Fan of Knives, it can be enough early on to kill some of their stuff. And now Cheap Shot kind of budget Fan of Knives here. Does give XiaoT a little breathing room.
Yeah, just a life total.
But not a lot of life to work with.
And it's going to get a little bit worse before it gets better.
Another Evil Genius drawn by Jing.
Yeah, the second Genius here is not nearly as impactful. Part of what makes Evil Genius so good is the fact that you can use the lackeys immediately with the rush, but XiaoT has nothing to rush down. XiaoT is conceding the board.
But still being able to go wide in the board here is pretty powerful. You know, your opponent has just used this cheap shot, which wasn't even in his deck, but
right.
Did give him the ability to clear off some of your wide board here, and now the ability to sort of reload that, and having a second Magic Carpet and more one drops in hand does give him an insurance policy against XiaoT getting a board himself.
Cobalt Lackey and Ethereal Lackey dealing damage and discovering a spell.
Almost out of time.
A lot of spells that you could get here for Warlock that'd be great. We're talking about Grim Rally, Soulfire. I'll take any direct damage.
Just gonna play the second carpet.
Interesting. Yeah, I think he didn't want to make himself very vulnerable to a Fan of Knives comeback.
Yep.
Waggle pick.
With two carpets in play, his board is very solid against most of the removal the Rogue has, right? The Fan of Knives just mentioned. What's this going to be like? Double backstab, double eviscerate to kill both of these? Because his hand is just three things that enable these to or rather are enabled by these. And also the fact that he had the Witchy and Lackey in hand. If XiaoT tries to use damage over multiple turns to clear off the Magic Carpets, he can just evolve them into a 4-drop.
Right. I think if he went wide, a prep fan would have been pretty interesting. So I like what Jing's head's at. Oh, Venomizer, but doesn't have anything to give it rushed.
Yep. He should pay better. Double time, double pay. That Venomizer, he'd be getting in there right now.
Well, he has two SI7 agent combos available, but still not going to be enough. Trying to find some way for XiaoT to get out of this. Looks like he's going to Shadow Step the Faceless Lackey for another attempt here. Is he going to pump the Van Cleave to the skies?
Oh, that gives him a Lackey.
Yeah.
All right, he's going for a big Van Cleave. 8-8.
Yep.
There's 5 damage on the board, though.
Yep, 2 with the Cobalt Lackey.
And 6, 7, 8, 9. Ethereal Lackey, I think, is how you want to start this off, because if you find... Soulfire, I think, kills your opponent, right? There's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Yes.
Yeah.
Grim Rally's also lethal.
Yep. So a lot of things you can find to just end the game right now. Jing goes digging. Grim Rally
here we
is
go.
there. So I think he may just be doing the math here, figuring out, okay, how does this add up?
Yep.
And he's going to find out it does add up.
Assuming the 9 count was correct, that I trusted Yum, but I think you're right.
Yep.
Can't see the board right now, so I can't really count.
Yeah, there's 1 2-power. 1 2-power, another 2-power, and 1 1-power. So
yes.
We're going to see abusive.
5.
Fight, maggot.
Lackey to the face. And the Grim Rally will seal the deal.
That should do it. And Jing is going to go to a 2-0 lead over XiaoT. This was an upset. Temple Rogue should have the 55-45 edge against Zoo Warlock. XiaoT is floundering right now, to say the least.
Yeah, those Magic Carpets really were what allowed Jing to dominate that game. Toughest matchup first and go from there. If I lose, fine. I'm in exactly the same position as far as the tournament is concerned. I just spent a little bit less time on stage sort of having to figure out all these plays.
Whew, speaking of the stage, you saw that game board of Dalaran pop up, and then all of a sudden the lights glows into an eerie purple. The scene is set. Will XiaoT be our first player to get swept here on the stage by fellow countryman Jing? We'll find out. Heading into the expansion, a lot of people were theorizing about Token Druid because there's a lot of support for it. Why do you think Token Druid has kind of fallen off a little bit here?
A big part of it is players preparing for it. The appearance of Fan of Knives in Rogue decks, like we were just mentioning. Also, it can sometimes have difficulty against some of the very, very aggressive decks as well. Like Rogue can sometimes be an issue even without the fan. You just get kind of dumpstered by it. Interestingly, the Warrior decks, the Control Warrior, can be pretty strong against it because it has all of the sort of clears. But the Bomb Warrior is probably a bit of a better matchup for the Token Druid deck.
Yeah, my theory is that in the very beginning of the expansion, there's some low-hanging fruit that kind of makes sense. I think Token Druid was a deck that a lot of people kind of understand what its general game plan was. So naturally very effective. But the more the expansion continues to develop, people know how to start teching against it.
Yes. Yeah, typically proactive linear decks perform very well at the beginning of expansions. You often see very aggressive decks as people are just trying to build their decks that do their things. You know, like we heard Raven and Subtle talking earlier about, you know, playing the Book of Specters Mage deck, the Summoner Mage deck, when a lot of early versions, they were kind of just all in. They're like, I have Power of Creations, I have all this stuff, I'm just like trying to do my thing as best I can.
Right.
And they didn't have tools that, you know, like the Rabble Rousers, or Rabble Bouncers rather, or Mind Control decks to give them the game against these aggressive decks that they now have realized they need to include.
Absolutely. Now that being said, you know, how does the mid-range Hunter and the Token Druid matchups pan out? The reason why I say it's XiaoT's worst remaining matchup, it's still pretty even. It's 49-51 according to some of the data out there. It's still not that bad. I mean, the reason why is because Token Druid is that unfavored against everything else in his lineup. And I think this early game, the first few turns here are going to be so crucial because we know how Token Druid can just have this sticky board that is really hard to remove. But Hunter has become very combo-oriented in the late stage of the game. We've seen a lot of the Hunters just make comebacks with Unleash the Hounds and Timberwolves, and if you're not careful, yeah, you have a big unkillable board, but you're also just going to die in the backswing.
Yeah, I actually think that this matchup is kind of interesting in that it's a matchup between the deck that people probably expected the most to show up that did not show up in high numbers, and the deck that people kind of expected the least that actually did show up in high numbers, which is the mid-range Hunter deck. The mid-range Hunter deck is one that a lot of people looking at the lists are like, where did all these decks come from?
Right.
You know, because it's not a deck that's very popular on ladder, you know, unlike Token Druid, which is quite popular and quite powerful on ladder. And I think a big part of that is that the mid-range Hunter deck is so bad against Rogue, and a lot of players who are choosing to play the mid-range Hunter deck are choosing to ban Rogue.
It's true. No, it's a really good point. Sometimes Hunter is a really good deck outside of one class that happens to dominate ladder, and therefore you don't see it represented very much. And that kind of happened in a lot of metas. You're talking about, like, you know, the mid-range Hunter meta, or you're talking about the Jade Druid meta. You know, when you eliminate these, like, tier 0 decks, how does the rest of the field pan out? And sometimes that's where other classes can really shine. And in this case, mid-range Hunter, a lot of players reassured us, yes, it is super good as long as you don't face against rogues. Even though we saw Hunter struggle the previous years with Language Hacker.
Yeah.
You can't be too results-oriented thinking when it comes to that. Hunter is still good. Now, XiaoT has a lot of weapon swings, but you can see how he values the board in this matchup. When you have up to 6 weapon durability for the Headhunter's Hatchet, and you're a Hunter with a hero power that deals 2 damage, you're like, okay, why not just go face a little bit? That is how conservative XiaoT is, because he recognizes that this board can get out of control if Jing plays Whispering Woods, for example, and gets ahead.
Speaking of which, Jing can coin out Whispering Woods here if he so chooses.
Yeah, it often is a play that Token Druid likes to do to present threats because they have ways to buff, they have ways to push damage, or even just Soul of the Forest right afterwards. And it's really scary because if you're not prepared, sometimes you lose the next turn.
You do have to be a little bit scared of your opponent just having Unleash the Hounds hitting you for a ton of damage, though you would have that crackback like you mentioned of being able to roar or just swipe the entire board away if it does decide to go face.
Yeah, I like the coin Whispering Woods, and if they spend their turn playing Unleash the Hounds, then you play Archmage Vargoth, and then they use some of their removal tools in order to...
And if they don't have Unleash, they need to find a sort of awkward way to deal with this.
Right.
Right now, XiaoT, he has Link's Spring Paw and the Liak plus Hatchet, so he can actually kill all but one of these with his current hand.
Yeah, build your own Unleash the Hounds.
Yeah, and looking for a real one. Does not find it. Does find Master's Call, Shimmerfly, Dire Frenzy.
Worth noting that XiaoT is playing the 1 copy of Witch Grigiously and the 1 copy of Vicious Scale High to help improve Dire Frenzy odds, and is playing 2 copies of Dire Frenzy, which is definitely a point of debate for a lot of Hunter experts.
Yeah. The Dire Frenzy in particular is touted as the reason this deck is good against Warrior. A lot of players are choosing to leave up Control Warrior. Bomb Warrior, interestingly, is the choice of a lot of players because they feel like it gives their Warrior decks a better chance in the bad matchups. For instance, in this particular matchup, XiaoT chose to ban Warrior. Despite having this Dire Frenzy deck, Jing has Bomb Warrior, which you can't just sit back and wait and Dire Frenzy your Thunder Rhinos, as we see the plan B against the controlling Warrior deck specifically.
And I think that was put on full display previous series with Language Hacker versus Killen all day. Killen was just able to put enough pressure with the Bomb Warrior, force Language Hacker to just hope for a Zul'jin at bailout. And a lot of times when you're in that position with Zul'jin, that it doesn't really end up that good a lot of the times.
Right.
Zul'jin is better when you're kind of even, you're trying to cement your lead, or you're just trying to push for the win. Now, Jing, he saw his opponent play tracking and all the rest of the spring paw plus the links in the hand. How does he retaliate here?
It's worth noting that XiaoT could have played that Lynx and got in for killing one of these additional wisps. Chooses not to. He decides that he wants to leave these up.
Right. He knows that if Jing commits to an Archmage Vargoth, he can kill the Vargoth with the second Lynx and the Leox. This is very astute because he was prepared for Jing's secondary option in case that he couldn't answer that.
Yeah.
Very smart from XiaoT, and this is, you can see why he is one of the most respected players from the West. One of the things that caught us off guard when we're interviewing players, a lot of the Western pros were picking XiaoT as the best player in the world, and that usually happens the other way. Eastern players are the ones praising the Western players, not the other way around.
Specifically, it is rare that you hear players praise players who they don't necessarily share language with, right? Yeah. A lot of times you'll hear, maybe a North American player will say, oh, well, this European player is the best, or generally you see a lot of regional pride in this, right?
Yeah.
But we heard Bunny Hopper, he say, I think, just at the last championship, I think XiaoT is the best player in the world.
Right.
In fact, he prepared for this tournament with XiaoT, which is something that is extremely uncommon to have players who are from different regions and don't even share the same languages. XiaoT does, he does speak English reasonably well.
Yeah, he actually has a Twitter account too, which is fairly uncommon for a lot of Chinese
He was claiming
players.
that he doesn't meme, and then I immediately pulled up his Twitter account and showed him a meme from his Twitter account.
He posted one like 12 hours before that interview. He's like, yeah,
busted.
I don't know any memes, man. And he just posted one right
it's like,
before.
you just posted this? What are you talking about?
And he does post his deck list and interact with people in English. And he, like you said, he prepared with Bunny Hopper. He said that he actually got really poor rest because of that. He's playing in bad time zones to practice with Western players.
A lot of times you talk to players about oh well, how big a deal is that this is you're playing in your home region, in an area very close to where you live. And he was saying, actually, I've been on European time this whole time. I've been preparing for the tournament because I practiced with Bunny Hopper. So.
I like this Witchwood Grizzly. I don't really think you can really save the Witchwood Grizzly for a better option later in the game because Token Druid does not have problem keeping their hands high size. You're looking at Acorn Bear, a card that Kibble was analyzing a lot on Omnistone, just being one of the unsung heroes of this deck.
Yeah, I think Acorn Bear, a lot of people saw that, they're like, ooh, this looks like it'd be good in Token Druid because it gives you extra stuff to buff. Well, one of the huge powers of Acorn Bear is the fact that it also just synergizes so well with Whispering Woods. You want to be able to be proactive and put threats on the board your opponent needs to deal with or get in some chip damage because you're playing a deck that tries to Savage Roar them out. Yes, sometimes you have these massive boards, but sometimes you're just trying to fight through removal and you have maybe 3 minions in play like we see Jing have now.
Right.
And the fact that Acorn Bear gives you 2 more cards in hand is a huge deal for that Whispering Woods.
Yeah, I mean, this is not entirely unreasonable to go for a Soul the Forest play.
Yeah, I think that you want to play the Acorn Bear and soul it up here simply because it's going to be difficult in this matchup to get better than this. If your opponent is picking apart your stuff, he has another Lynx in hand.
Right. It's always like evaluating the Creed. You're thinking, man, I could get a few more Treants, but what's important for Jing is to also utilize his hand effectively. Hogsteed and Savage Roar is a fantastic combo in hand. Archmage Vargoth, not really doing much by himself. And then Swipe, I mean, he's not going to be doing anything against this Witcher Grizzly board. I think utilizing that Soul of the Forest in this position was the right call.
It's worth noting, by the way, that Witchwood Grizzly is not a particularly common inclusion in these Hunter decks. It's pretty much, I believe, just Bunny Hopper, his test group, effectively, that decided to play it in this tournament. And they just kind of wanted something to help shore up what are the perceived weaknesses of the deck against aggressive decks. Yeah. And it's coming up pretty big here because if that were, say a Savannah Highmane, right? It wouldn't be doing anything to prevent this kind of aggression.
Yeah, and I think it also has replicated results even on ladder. Shortly after the deck was released, you saw multiple people hitting top 10 legend with this exact deck list as well.
Yeah.
Quickly.
This just Scale Hide. I love this tech, especially because there's 2 taunts behind it. Being able to land Dire Frenzy after that oftentimes is swinging enough to end the game.
And here, we see XiaoT, okay, he's going to pick apart 2 of the Wisps as well as 2 of the
Right.
treants that come off of them. Now Jing, still a big hand, in part thanks to that Acorn Bearer, but not really a great opportunity to get damage in here.
He does have the Hogsmeade Savage Roar play right now, which lets him clear off most of this. And the nice thing is that Jing has the resource advantage.
Right.
The Forest Aid, a new rare spell from the Rise of Shadows expansion, has Twin Spell, summon 5 2/2 Treants. That just gives you 2 turns to play stuff, and your opponent has to counter it. And remember, there's not a lot of ways for Hunter to conveniently access removal, not without Unleash the Hounds. Rex are rotated out, and it's like, how else are they supposed to get it? They're not playing Explosive Trap.
Yeah, the Force Aid was sort of quietly, I think, one of the cards that made Token Druid a threat. Because in a lot of cases, you're like, okay, well, there's no more Ultimate Infestation. Nourish got nerfed. You're not really playing a ramp sort of card draw style of deck anymore. How is this going to work?
Sure.
And this Force Aid gives you, while it is expensive, this really powerful reload. Yes, your opponent can wipe it away with like a Hellfire or some sort of AoE, but you're already forcing them to have AoE all the way up to this point.
Wow. Jing, of course, utilizing Swipe makes sense too. It's a little bit better to hold on to Savage Roar as the game scales now they draw the Forest Aid. But how big is that Zul'jin draw?
It is a 10 mana Zul'jin. It's pretty big.
It's very important for XiaoT to have long-term game plan, and the reason why that Zul'jin's good, not because of just the spells and able to destroy the board potentially with casting Unleash the Hounds and etc., is that you're able to draw even more cards further.
Yeah.
So it keeps his hand economy equal to that of Jing's, and in my opinion, having Zul'jin and just play that Master's Call, we have a real Hearthstone game in our hands.
We do, though. Looking at how these next couple turns are going to play out right now, XiaoT, he can play. For instance, he can play the Hyena and the Hatchet and kill one of the Treants and the Murloc, and then Jing has the opportunity to kind of reload a bit. And XiaoT, he'll only be able to buff the Hyena once if he does choose to play it, so he's not really going to have the opportunity. I think he'll probably hold on to it and combine it with the Tundra Rhino, but he won't necessarily have minions to go along with it if he does.
Yeah, perhaps the Shimmerfly is a little bit better, so you might get some spell
I think he can just hero power here, because he can play the Shimmerfly alongside the Tundra Rhino next turn anyway. If he wants, he can play Shimmerfly, Tundra Rhino, and Hyena next turn, which makes the Hyena better as it is.
That's true. And also, you're probably not gonna have
Landscaping is a draw. Vargoth Landscaping is available for Jing this turn. And not only does that give Jing a big board with the Savage Roar in his hand, but also sort of forces the removal on the Vargoth to prevent more possible AoE buffs or minion generation here from Jing. So XiaoT, he has that Zul'jin, but that's still several turns away, and this is a lot of pressure. Okay, Marked Shot. He can Marked Shot Vargoth, kill it with the weapon, and hope to find a multi-shot or an explosive trap.
Right. The danger is that there's a lot of ways for Token Druid to buff their board to get out of that range.
Well, if he does find, say, a multi-shot, he could kill 2 of them at least. But you do still leave 3 minions on the board, which is pretty scary.
Still very scary. With a lot more reload to come.
Right.
The Forest Aid next turn will just put out more treants.
Yeah, that's why I was saying I felt like the Zul'jin didn't seem that impactful, because you're kind of in a position where your opponent's going to be forcing wave after wave of stuff you have to deal with before Zul'jin will even be online. I feel like it's a bit too late. So Marked Shot will dig for XiaoT. He finds Arcane Shot, Rapid Fire, Cybertech Chip. So the Arcane Shot is removal for one of these minions.
Sure.
Quickly.
All right, gonna chip away a little bit. But that's gonna be Jing starting his turn with 4 treants. Roar alone is 10.
Plus hero power.
Plus hero power. That's lethal, right?
Lethal.
Savage Roar, hero power.
Are you serious?
And that's just, I think Jing's going to do a little bit of math here.
Yeah.
But 10 plus 8 plus 1, that is 19, and that is XiaoT's life total.
Token Druid gets over the hump, And this is a massive victory, not just for Jing, but there's also another token player, Drew the player in the tournament, that was not sure about the performance. And I'm sure Ike in the back room is fist pumping right now.
Yeah, and you know, this Jing with a 3-0 victory over XiaoT. XiaoT heralded by many as the best player in China, perhaps the best player in the world, goes down in 3 straight games to his countrymen.
Jing, the aggro specialist from China, takes down XiaoT.